Across the historical timeline, few figures have exemplified the union of power and wisdom as profoundly as Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, Roman emperor, Stoic philosopher, and, to many, the embodiment of the philosopher king. Born in 121 CE, he inherited not only a vast empire, but also a remarkable intellectual legacy that shaped his rule in ways that continue to influence us today. In his quest to govern with justice and humility, Marcus Aurelius composed Meditations, a collection of deeply personal reflections on life, virtue, and duty. Within these pages, he bared his struggles, his hopes for a virtuous life, and the weighty responsibilities of leading a vast and often turbulent empire. Yet, despite the centuries that separate his world from ours, his words remain astonishingly relevant, guiding modern readers towards serenity and moral clarity. This is the story of a leader who braved frontier wars and a devastating plague, who juggled familial duties with public obligations, and who, amidst the clamor of court intrigue and military battles, maintained an unwavering devotion to philosophical introspection. Join us as we journey through the life of Marcus Aurelius, exploring how he became one of Rome's most revered emperors and an enduring symbol of Stoic wisdom. Through research, expert insights, and the words of the emperor himself, we'll discover how his philosophical convictions shaped his reign, and why his message of virtue, resilience, and compassion continues to echo across time. When Marcus Aurelius was born on April 26, 121 CE, few could have foreseen that this infant, then named Marcus Annius Verus, would one day become one of Rome's greatest emperors. He came into a family of considerable influence. His father, Marcus Annius Verus III, was a respected praetor, and his mother, Domitia Lucilla, was descended from a wealthy and distinguished line. From the start, Marcus was immersed in the very fabric of Rome's political elite. The future emperor's life took a decisive turn when his father died while Marcus was still a child. As a result, he was placed under the protection of Emperor Hadrian, a familial connection that would prove pivotal. Hadrian took a keen interest in the young boy's upbringing, ensuring he received every advantage befitting a future leader of Rome. In 138 CE, as Hadrian's health waned, he selected Antoninus Pius to succeed him. At the same time, he ordered Antoninus to adopt Marcus, ensuring that the boy would remain in the imperial line of succession. Thus began a profound mentorship, with Marcus transitioning from a promising aristocrat to the chosen heir of Rome. Behind the grandeur of his destiny, Marcus lived a life of discipline and study. This blend of privilege and expectation shaped him from an early age, instilling both a sense of duty and the intellectual curiosity that would later flower in his philosophical writings. From the outset, Marcus Aurelius displayed a pronounced inclination toward learning. His tutors noted his quiet determination and moral seriousness. Among those who shaped his intellectual growth were philosophers and rhetoricians who introduced him to Stoic principles, ideas centered around virtue, self-control, and rational understanding of the world. Key to his early formation was his study of Epictetus, the former slave whose discourses emphasized the importance of inner freedom over external circumstances. Marcus also learned from Junius Rusticus, a Stoic mentor who gave him direct access to Epictetus's teachings. It was Rusticus who is said to have helped Marcus develop the habits of reflection and self-examination that would later guide him through the trials of empire. This grounding in philosophy wasn't merely an academic exercise. It would become a lifelong practice, an internal compass that helped Marcus navigate the turbulence of politics and war. Even as he mastered rhetoric and governance, young Marcus never lost sight of the ethical principles that would define his reign. With the foundation of a rigorous education and the moral bedrock of Stoic thought, Marcus Aurelius was prepared, at least academically, for the responsibilities that awaited him. Yet, the journey from promising student to Rome's highest office was only beginning. With the death of Emperor Hadrian and the accession of Antoninus Pius, Marcus Aurelius found himself gradually drawn into the sphere of Roman politics. While still in his teens, he began accompanying Antoninus at public ceremonies, senate meetings, and administrative councils, absorbing firsthand the intricacies of imperial governance. As a witness to the day-to-day affairs of the empire, Marcus was thrust into an apprenticeship that tested both his intellect and character. Guided by Antoninus's steady hand, he learned the essentials of governance, overseeing grain supplies, upholding laws, and managing diplomatic relations. This was not merely a matter of regal pomp. It was a rigorous schooling in the statecraft, required to maintain stability across Rome's vast territories. During these formative years, his philosophical inclinations began to blend with political reality. Even as he wrestled with matters of law and taxation, Marcus remained anchored by the ethical foundations imparted by Stoic doctrine. The result was a leader in the making, one who aspired to uphold justice and virtue, despite the challenges and complexities of Roman rule. In 138 CE, the course of Marcus Aurelius's life changed decisively. Emperor Hadrian, in his final act of succession, had arranged for Antoninus Pius to adopt Marcus. This was no simple gesture. It solidified Marcus's standing as the next in line to rule the vast Roman Empire. The adoption was more than a legal formality. It symbolized a profound transfer of trust and responsibility, Hadrian's legacy passing to Antoninus, and from Antoninus ultimately to Marcus. This moment marked Marcus as the empire's heir apparent, placing upon his shoulders the immeasurable weight of future leadership. From that point forward, Marcus's every lesson in statecraft bore heightened significance. Whether addressing the Senate or presiding over judicial proceedings, he operated with the knowledge that all eyes were upon him, measuring his potential as the next emperor. In those critical years, Marcus blended his studies in philosophy with the grittier demands of governance, forging the character that would shape his reign. Thus, a philosopher king was coming into being, molded by both the intellectual rigor of Stoicism and the practical wisdom of empire. Yet, his ascent was far from complete. Ahead lay a co-rule that would test his diplomatic skills, and the threat of war that would challenge his deepest convictions. In 161 CE, the Roman Empire witnessed a groundbreaking political experiment, the formal elevation of two emperors sharing the mantle of supreme authority. Marcus Aurelius, steeped in Stoic principles, was joined by his adoptive brother, Lucius Verus, an emperor with a starkly different temperament and set of priorities. For many Romans, this dual rule posed questions about unity and effective leadership. On one side stood Marcus, the philosopher king in the making, contemplative and steady. On the other side was Lucius, charismatic, fond of luxury, and often drawn to life's pleasures. Yet behind these contrasting public images lay a shared responsibility, to preserve Rome's power and stability on multiple fronts. Despite their differences, the co-rulers often acted in concert. Marcus oversaw much of the administrative burden, continuing the legacy of Antoninus Pius's measured governance, while Lucius took on high-profile tasks that sometimes required a more dynamic presence. This balancing act would define their tenure, charting a course for Rome in an era of external threats and internal reforms. Behind the ceremonial pomp, however, an ever-present truth remained. The empire's borders were under strain, and soon circumstances would demand that the two emperors direct their energies to a distant war that threatened Rome's influence in the east. In 161 CE, almost immediately after Marcus and Lucius assumed the co-throne, Rome faced a renewed challenge from the Parthian Empire. This ancient rival, long a thorn in Rome's eastern territories, pushed against the imperial frontiers, threatening valuable trade routes and regional stability. With his penchant for the grand and theatrical, Lucius Verus took charge of the campaign in the east. While Marcus Aurelius remained in Rome, managing civic affairs and legislative duties, Lucius journeyed with the legions across Asia Minor to confront the Parthian threat head-on. However, the campaign's successes were not owed solely to Lucius's leadership. Skilled generals and well-disciplined legions turned the tide, capturing strategic cities and restoring Roman authority in the east. Still, Lucius' presence as co-emperor gave legitimacy and momentum to the endeavor, reminding all that Rome stood united under two rulers, even when divided by geography. Despite these victories, rumors circulated of Lucius's indulgences during the war, lavish banquets, expensive entertainments, and a personal lifestyle at odds with the austerity Marcus Aurelius embraced. Yet by 166 CE, the Parthian threat had been largely contained, allowing Lucius to return to Rome in triumph. In the public eye, this victory cemented the efficacy of the co-rule, even if its foundations rested on two markedly different leadership styles. But the empire's momentary peace was soon overshadowed by another, more insidious menace, a plague that followed the returning legions and a looming conflict on Rome's northern frontier. In the year 169 CE, the Roman Empire mourned the death of Lucius Verus. Despite his indulgent reputation, his passing brought an end to the historic experiment of co-rule and placed the weight of empire squarely on Marcus Aurelius's shoulders. No longer a partner on the throne, Marcus now stood alone, confronted by challenges that would test both his statesmanship and his Stoic convictions. With Lucius gone, Marcus took immediate steps to steady the empire. He delved deeper into the administrative concerns he had long overseen, safeguarding grain distributions, reaffirming alliances, and passing legal reforms that emphasized justice and clemency. Yet shadows loomed on the horizon. Rome's northern frontiers faced persistent threats from Germanic tribes, while internally, the empire still grappled with the aftermath of the Antonine Plague. In this precarious climate, Marcus Aurelius stood at a crossroads. Guided by Stoic teachings, he aspired to uphold Rome's grandeur without succumbing to tyranny. The stage was set for some of the most pivotal military campaigns of his reign, conflicts that would forge his legacy as both a warrior emperor and a philosophical leader. The Marcomannic Wars, beginning around 166 CE, would dominate much of Marcus Aurelius's later reign. Germanic and Sarmatian tribes, emboldened by Rome's preoccupation with the Parthian War and weakened by the Antonine Plague, launched incursions across the Danube frontier. This was not a single decisive battle, but a grueling series of confrontations that tested the empire's resolve. Marcus, recognizing the severity of these threats, personally took command of the Roman legions. Far from the opulence of the imperial palace, he lived among his troops, enduring harsh winters, makeshift camps, and scarce provisions. It was here in the fields of battle that he would pen many of his reflections, later compiled into meditations. These campaigns tested every facet of the emperor's character. His Stoic roots guided him in granting mercy to defeated enemies who laid down their arms, in offering fair terms of peace when possible, and in maintaining discipline among the troops without resorting to cruelty. Yet the wars dragged on. Rebellion flared in frontier provinces, calling Marcus back to the battlefield time and again. By 175 CE, signs of Roman success emerged. The tribes were gradually pushed back beyond the Danube, allowing Marcus to negotiate settlements and fortify the borders. However, the strains of warfare, epidemic disease, and the constant need for vigilant defense took their toll on the empire's treasury, on its citizens, and on the emperor himself. In these moments, we glimpse the paradox at the heart of Marcus Aurelius's reign, the philosopher king forced into a warrior's role. Far from the quiet corridors of study, he wrestled with the stark realities of protecting an empire amid ceaseless strife. Even so, his meditations remained a testament to hope, urging moral clarity and steadfastness, even when the world seemed relentlessly harsh. Amid the cacophony of war and the pressures of imperial rule, Marcus Aurelius sought solace in philosophy. His most enduring legacy, Meditations, was penned during these turbulent years, likely in the very heart of military encampments. Originally titled to himself, this personal journal was written in Greek, reflecting both the cosmopolitan nature of Rome's elite and Marcus's desire for introspection over pomp. Though never intended for publication, Meditations came to epitomize the core tenets of Stoicism. The text reveals Marcus's private struggles to maintain reason and virtue, even as the empire around him was consumed by strife. In his reflections, he grapples with anger, fate, loss, and the impermanence of life, urging himself, and by extension, all who read it, to act with integrity and clarity of purpose. What makes these writings so compelling is their timelessness. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the Western world, wrestled with the same fears, anxieties, and hopes as any individual. He reminded himself to show kindness, remain humble, and accept the unpredictable nature of the universe. Meditations, therefore, becomes both a historical artifact and a living guide, speaking across centuries to anyone seeking wisdom in hardship. As emperor, Marcus Aurelius strove to apply the principles he explored in Meditations to the governance of Rome. He believed in ruling as a servant to the common good, emphasizing justice, compassion, and moral responsibility. Where other emperors might have indulged in displays of grandeur, Marcus practiced a certain restraint, an echo of Stoicism's call for moderation. Underpinning many of these policies was a genuine concern for the welfare of Rome's diverse populations. Marcus's efforts to support orphans, aid the poor, and grant clemency to conquered tribes illustrate Stoicism in action, duty and virtue intertwined to shape both public and private decisions. In his eyes, the glory of Rome meant little without a moral foundation. Historians argue that Marcus Aurelius's philosophical grounding set him apart from many of his predecessors and successors. It guided him to maintain a delicate balance, upholding the empire's authority while tempering power with humility. His rare fusion of intellect and responsibility earned him the admiration of contemporaries and the reverence of posterity. In Marcus Aurelius, we find an emperor caught between the demands of empire and the pursuit of inner virtue. Despite the relentless challenges, frontier wars, plague, political strife, he never ceased to turn inward, seeking guidance from the Stoic ideals he held dear. It is this steadfast commitment to principle that has immortalized him as the quintessential philosopher king. For Marcus Aurelius, the bonds of family were both a refuge and a source of profound responsibility. His marriage to Faustina the Younger, daughter of Emperor Antoninus Pius, represented a union not only of aristocratic lines, but of mutual respect. Historical accounts describe Faustina as a spirited and influential empress, with a keen sense for courtly politics and imperial duties. As the years passed, Marcus and Faustina had multiple children, most notably Commodus, who would one day inherit the throne. Balancing the roles of father and emperor was no easy task. The glare of public scrutiny meant that each decision concerning his children was magnified. While Marcus endeavored to guide them toward the virtues he held dear, palace life had its own temptations and pressures, foreshadowing the challenges that would eventually surface with Commodus's reign. In private, Marcus enjoyed rare moments of domestic contentment, sharing philosophical discussions with Faustina and reading to his children. Yet, rumors and tragedies also touched the imperial household. Several of Marcus and Faustina's children did not survive to adulthood, underscoring the fragility of life even at the highest echelons of power. These personal losses shaped Marcus's reflections on mortality and impermanence, themes that echo throughout Meditations. Despite the weight of imperial expectations, the emotional bond between Marcus, Faustina, and their children remained a guiding force. In this intimate setting, the emperor confronted the most personal dimensions of his Stoic creed: love, loss, and the unrelenting demands of duty. Beyond familial ties, Marcus Aurelius relied on a network of close advisors and trusted friends, figures who provided intellectual, moral, and political support. Among them was Gaius Aufidius Victorinus, a respected consul, and Claudius Severus, a philosopher-statesman who shared Marcus's admiration for Greek thought. However, none left as indelible a mark on Marcus's philosophical journey as Junius Rusticus. Junius Rusticus was more than a mentor. He was the gateway through which Marcus discovered Epictetus's discourses, the bedrock of his Stoic framework. In Meditations, Marcus himself acknowledges Rusticus's profound influence, crediting him for igniting his passion for moral philosophy and for discouraging empty rhetoric. This deep respect extended to other mentors as well, including Fronto, who taught Marcus the art of Latin eloquence. Through these friendships, Marcus honed not only his philosophical worldview, but also his capacity for compassion and introspection. They challenged him to refine his thinking, to remain humble in the face of power, and to keep virtue at the heart of every decision. In a court teeming with political maneuvering, such relationships grounded him in principles that transcended mere ambition. For all the grandeur of the imperial title, Marcus Aurelius saw in his friends and mentors the values he cherished most: wisdom, integrity, and loyalty. They were indispensable to navigating the complexities of governance and war, reminding him that even the mightiest ruler is shaped by the counsel and companionship of those he trusts. These relationships, both familial and intellectual, offer a window into the human dimensions of an emperor. They were the anchors that kept Marcus Aurelius connected to his highest ideals, even when confronted by the immense pressures of leadership. But challenges lay ahead, challenges that would test not just his philosophical mettle, but his resilience in the face of an empire beset by disease and uncertainty. Amid Rome's external conflicts, a silent and devastating enemy emerged from within. Known to history as the Antonine Plague, this epidemic struck the empire around 165 CE, likely introduced by soldiers returning from the Parthian campaign. For over a decade, its relentless grip would claim countless lives, destabilize the economy, and test the very foundations of Roman society. From the crowded tenements of the capital to the farthest reaches of the frontier, no region was spared. Chroniclers describe scenes of hospitals overwhelmed, temples filled with supplicants praying for relief, and the harrowing toll on military manpower. As emperor, Marcus Aurelius faced a crisis unlike any in recent memory, one that demanded swift, compassionate leadership while straining the resources of an already embattled empire. Marcus directed substantial funds toward public health measures and ensured that those afflicted, including soldiers, received care and supplies. Yet, the death toll climbed, underscoring the empire's vulnerability. The Stoic principles he had long studied now became a lifeline, shaping his response to mass suffering. Where others might have succumbed to panic, he remained focused on mitigating hardship and maintaining public order. For many Romans, this was a time of both spiritual and political upheaval. Traditional gods were invoked alongside foreign deities as people searched for meaning amid the epidemic. Through it all, Marcus Aurelius endeavored to embody the virtues he so cherished: empathy, resilience, and a calm steadiness in the face of overwhelming grief. The Antonine Plague was but one test of Marcus Aurelius's resolve. Even as the empire reeled under the epidemic, unrest simmered on its frontiers, and political tensions brewed within the capital. In these darkest hours, Marcus turned once more to the discipline of Stoicism. It was here, in the quiet hours after administering a crisis-torn realm, that he returned to his reflections, a practice he would later call essential to preserving his sanity. Stoicism taught acceptance of life's trials as part of the natural order, urging individuals to focus on moral character over outcomes beyond their control. In Meditations, Marcus confronted the paradoxes of power and powerlessness: absolute authority over an empire, yet no control over disease or fate. These private writings, never intended for an audience, reveal a leader wrestling with self-doubt, grief, and the weight of responsibility. Yet in that tension lay his greatest strength. By confronting the harshness of reality with sober reflection, Marcus found a clarity that guided his public decisions. His decrees to distribute grain, stabilize the currency, and offer support to orphans showed a ruler determined to alleviate suffering despite his own turmoil. Over time, many would hail him as a model of composure and compassion under pressure. In the end, It was Marcus's capacity to remain steadfast, anchored in principle even when shaken by loss, that has etched his name into the annals of history. It is within these pages of Meditations, and in the quiet heroism of his actions, that we see the beating heart of the philosopher king laid bare. In the empire's darkest nights, he held a beacon of resilience, reminding all of the power of virtue when despair looms large. As the 170th CE drew to a close, Marcus Aurelius looked to the future of the Roman Empire. Having long grappled with frontier wars and a devastating plague, he now turned his attention to a challenge closer to home, ensuring a smooth succession. His son Commodus, born into luxury yet raised in the shadow of constant war, was poised to inherit an empire that had been both guarded and molded by Marcus's steady hand. Despite the emperor's best efforts to instill Stoic values, Commodus displayed a temperament far different from his father. Accounts from ancient sources and modern historians suggest that Commodus favored spectacles, personal glory, and a more extravagant lifestyle. Nevertheless, Marcus persevered in his lessons, hopeful that the principles of justice and virtue might yet take root in his heir. Many in the court whispered doubts about the prince's readiness to rule, yet, bound by family ties and the Roman tradition of dynastic inheritance, Marcus Aurelius pressed on, preparing Commodus to assume the burdens of command. Only time would reveal whether these efforts bore fruit or spelled a darker chapter in Rome's future. In the year 180 CE, Marcus Aurelius returned once more to the northern borders to confront the lingering threats posed by Germanic tribes. Weakened from years of campaigning and the toll of governing through crises, his health began to fail. Amid the Spartan accommodations of the military camp, the emperor took to his bed, surrounded by loyal officers, physicians, and concerned followers. On March 17, 180 CE, the philosopher king breathed his last. There on the Danube frontier, far from Rome's marble palaces, he succumbed to illness. The empire mourned the passing of a ruler who had guided Rome through relentless storms, foreign invasions, internal unrest, and a devastating plague, while striving to maintain the virtue and reason he cherished in his private reflections. News of the emperor's death spread swiftly, and tributes poured in from every corner of the realm. Many marveled at how he had balanced the sword and the scroll, leading armies while penning the very reflections that would endure for centuries. But with his passing, the question loomed: what would become of the empire under Commodus, and would the ideals of Marcus Aurelius survive beyond his own lifetime? Thus ended the life of Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, a man shaped by destiny, tested by tribulation, and devoted to philosophy. Even in death his influence persisted, etched into the very heart of Rome and enshrined in the pages of Meditations. He left behind a legacy that would be recast by scholars, leaders, and thinkers across the ages, each one finding new insights in the timeless words of the last great emperor of Rome's Pax Romana. With the death of Marcus Aurelius, Rome lost an emperor whose blend of wisdom and authority would inspire generations to come. From early Christian thinkers to Enlightenment philosophers, countless minds have turned to him as a model of the philosopher king, a ruler who sought to govern not through conquest or self-indulgence, but through rational thought and moral integrity. Medieval Europe preserved fragments of Meditations through monastic scriptoria, while Renaissance humanists rediscovered classical works, praising Marcus Aurelius for his dedication to ethical leadership. Later, Enlightenment thinkers saw in him the ideal of a rational ruler, one who anchored decisions in reason rather than blind tradition or authoritarian whim. From Montesquieu to modern-day philosophers, Meditations has repeatedly been cited as a cornerstone of ethical governance. Today, his words echo across lecture halls, social media discussions, and personal diaries. He remains a symbol of leadership tempered by introspection, an example of how to wield power responsibly by balancing external demands with an unwavering moral compass. Beyond the sphere of formal politics, the lessons of Marcus Aurelius resonate with individuals navigating the complexities of modern life. His reflections on acceptance, resilience, and the pursuit of virtue feel surprisingly applicable in an age marked by rapid change and uncertainty. Whether used for stress management, ethical decision-making, or personal development, Meditations continues to offer a blueprint for cultivating inner peace amidst external upheaval. His insistence on empathy, accountability, and self-discipline speaks to those who grapple with professional responsibilities or personal dilemmas. Even his emphasis on recognizing our shared humanity carries renewed weight in a globalized world, reminding us that each of us can strive to be better citizens, neighbors, and friends. By integrating the wisdom gleaned from his Stoic reflections into everyday life, Marcus Aurelius offers us a vision of leadership and personal conduct that transcends the centuries. His legacy, intertwined with Rome's long and storied past, endures as an ever-relevant guide for those who seek to live with purpose, integrity, and compassion. In a world still fraught with challenges, the philosopher king lights a path forward, reminding us that true strength arises above all from the pursuit of virtue. As we bring this journey to a close, the image of Marcus Aurelius, the emperor with the soul of a philosopher, remains ever luminous in the pantheon of Roman leaders. From his formative education under the watchful eyes of Hadrian and Antoninus Pius, to the co-rule with Lucius Verus, through the heartbreak of plague and the trials of frontier wars, his life was one of endurance, principle, and profound contemplation. Through it all, Marcus Aurelius remained bound to a vision of leadership informed by a moral compass. His meditations, private journals written in times of crisis, offer a window into a mind forever wrestling with the tension between imperial power and personal virtue. In doing so, they transform a distant historical figure into a deeply human guide for those who grapple with questions of duty, resilience, and compassion. His story endures not merely in marble statues or faded manuscripts, but in the hearts and minds of all who read his words. A ruler who governed an empire yet spoke to the intimate challenges of daily life has lessons to share with us still, reminding us that the path to wisdom often lies in self-examination and empathy for others. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, stands as a testament to the possibility that power need not corrupt, that reflection can guide even the mightiest throne, and that genuine humanity can shine through the harshest demands of governance. May his life and writings inspire each of us to stand firm in virtue, seek truth above vanity, and remember the shared, fragile humanity that binds us together, across the centuries and into our collective future.